yeah, we'll do some live coding, look at some code bases. We'll play around with Andre's ZBD Starter Playground, which shows lots of different implementations of the API in use using Next.js. Cool, let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, like ZBD offers plug and play, fully functional Lightning support, including LN URL, Lightning address via a simple API. So you can see that you don't have to worry about like any sort of liquidity or any setup. If you know how to work with APIs, you can build Lightning applications, Bitcoin applications. So some of the advantages are that it's plug and play, it's easy to integrate, it's stable, lots of education and documentation. So to get started, I wrote this Python SDK, so if you're a Python developer, you can use this. You can see some examples, and then if you're a JavaScript developer, we have a Node.js SDK, which also works with Next, if you're looking to build applications in JavaScript. I don't know Rust, so unfortunately I can't help there. But yeah, we have like the GitHub links, and I'll send this out into the chat. You can see here, if you go to the ZBDIO GitHub, you can find the Node.js, and it's pretty simple to install. Just do npm install. Oh, I'm not sharing screen? Oh. Yeah. Sorry, I just started going. I'm very LFG, so once I'm like, all right, I'm ready to go, I just start going. Sorry about that, everyone.
Hey, nothing stopping Sam.
Yeah, nothing's stopping me, not even screen share. All right, cool. So this was the slide to talk about with ZBD, plug and play. We have Lightning API. Here's GitHub. So here's the example. It's under my personal account. So it's under Zantoshi. And you can see here, all you have to do to get started with the Python SDK is pip install ZBD. And then if you're looking to use like JavaScript, you can use this Node.js SDK, and it's as simple as npm install ZBD/node. And we have the SDK documentation here as well, and I'll walk you through all the methods that you can use once you have a ZBD object. From there, this is kind of what it looks like to create a charge. So how many people are already familiar with like both 11 invoices, LN URL, and Lightning address?
Woo! Yeah.
All right.
Let's go.
And then how many people are not familiar? Just trying to get a gauge of like how much you want to cover. Okay, cool. So to take a look at like Lightning charges, for example, this is a payment request. So this is how you receive money into your wallet. So you can create a charge. This is like the lowest level of Lightning at the protocol level. So you can generate a charge. Every wallet supports it. And then you have LN URLs, which also allow you to receive money or send money out. And you can also pay these charges. So this is the way that you would do it. It's specified in millisats. You can do like ZBD.create charge, the amount like 1337, and then you need to add the 3 zeros since it's in millisats. You can specify a description. This is viewable to the user, so you'll want to make sure that it makes sense. And then if you're looking to do something after someone has paid it, then you would specify like a callback URL, for example. And then, like we were talking about, you'd be able to pay a charge, so you can pass in an invoice, you can specify a description, internal ID, and the callback URL. And if you hear me say like charge, invoice, both 11, those all mean the same thing. These are just payment requests. From there, we also have the ability to make it easy for users to move funds around or withdraw from your service. So for example, you can do ZBD.create withdrawal request, and you can specify the amount, description. You can even provide an internal ID, so you can look up a user, as well as like a callback URL to again get like a status update if the withdrawal request expires, there's an error, like it fails, or it completes. You can also send payments to Lightning address, and we'll get to like what that stuff is here shortly. To send a payment to a Lightning address, it looks just like an email. It's used for receiving money. So there's a Lightning address here, Andre@zbd.gg, and again, you can specify the amount in millisats, and you can specify a comments as well. So pretty straightforward, like simple API call, and you can also do it for like ZBD internal username, which is what we call a gamer tag. You can also use key send. We have like other utility API calls that you can make from the SDK to get the Bitcoin exchange rate. And let's go ahead and like take a look at some of the things that we can do with the ZBD API. But first, let me walk you through like how to use the ZBD API. So first, you have our developer dashboard. This is at dashboard.zbd.io. And from there, you can create an account. If you're interested in using the API, just let me know and I'll give you an invite code. I already have an account, so I'm just going to bypass that. All right, cool. So here we have like projects, and you can see I have like this main wallet. If you're going to be looking to like send payments, you're going to need to fund this wallet first. If you need some sats, let me know. I'm happy to give you some sats. Otherwise, if you already have sats, which I would suspect many of you do, you can always just create a charge, enter an amount, and then top up the wallet. So for example, here I have my ZBD browser extension. Whoops. Then I made the payment, and now the funds are available in my wallet. So from there, I can create a new project. So we'll call it tab 2023. Then this is a description. From there, I want to go live. Maybe I'm reckless, but I want to use some real sats. So then I can transfer from like the main wallet to the new wallet that I just created. And now I have some sats available in my Tabconf wallet, and now I can begin like using the API and processing payments. So we'll go ahead and set up the starter playground, and we can walk through some of the charges and what those look like, and maybe some examples of how those work. All right, cool. So I'm following a guide that Andre set up for the Next.js dev playground. So here I'm going to use this template. So this is available on Andre's blog, .xyz. It's called Bitcoin Starter Playground. So here I have the link pulled up. We're going to click Use Template. We'll give it a name. Continue with GitHub. Cool. We'll just call this Tabconf 2023. Let this get set up. All right, now we have all the code. We need to get an API key like we just set up, and we'll set the secret. We need to call it ZBD API key. So here I'm going to head back, grab my API key from my project. We're going to set up our secret, and then we're going to run it. Click secrets down here, new secret, ZBD API key, add secret. Now from there we should be able to click run, and we can get an example of what these user experience flows look like and how they work, and we'll examine some of the code as well. Cool. Looks like everything's spun up now. All right. Probably can be a little bit slow sometimes, so just give it a minute to load. Another thing that we can show in the meantime, while this is loading, is we have this awesome resource at zbd.dev. You can pull this up, and this also has like all the things that we're talking about today. So you have, for example, the Node.js Quick Start, the starter playground, which is what I'm walking through right now, along with the API reference. If you want to make API calls directly, you totally can. For example, if we want to send a Lightning address payment, which is kind of what we were walking through earlier, you can do so just right through the documentation. So I selected API reference, I went down to page the Lightning address. Now I can pass in an API key and I can send the request, basically. Let's see if, here we go, now everything's loaded. We'll open up the playground. Cool, so charge, payment request like we were talking about earlier, we can pass in a description, we'll hit test, and then from there, you can see we got a response back and you can kind of see what the data looks like. You can see the invoice and even copy the invoice and pay it. So here, copy it. Pay, paste in the invoice. Oh, my keyboard's not working for some reason. Let's take out my phone. Pay it. All right, awesome. So I just sent the payment. And now let's check our project wallet. We'll refresh. And voila, received 100 sats. So we know we set everything up correctly. So again, charge is how we receive money into the wallet. Charges can be great for like e-commerce, paywalls. They could be great for tipping, so these are some of the use cases that you can use charges for. For withdrawal requests, this is getting money out. So normally, like what you have to do with the charge is the charge will have like a time frame that'll expire. You can pay it once in most cases, and many wallets don't support paying over the charge amount. So because of that, there are other payment orchestration protocols built on top, for example, LNURL, and LNURL features a method called withdrawal request. So normally what you'd have to do is you'd have to create a charge from the wallet that you're trying to move money into, copy it, go back to the other application, paste it in, then hit pay, and then the funds will transfer. Now you could just create, for example, a withdrawal request. So you create this QR code, and now you could copy it or scan it with your phone, and you can move money back into another wallet just by scanning a QR code. One great use case that this is used for, like Azteca vouchers, to sell Bitcoin for cash, for example. So that's one use case that are common, like that's used for withdrawal requests. Other services where you earn sats, you can create withdrawal requests to allow the user to move funds off of your platform into their preferred wallet of choice. And many of like the self-custodial wallets out there also support this option. Then we have Lightning address. So we have utility endpoints where you can validate a Lightning address before you attempt to pay it. To check if it's true, you can check the minimum amount of funds, you can check the maximum amount of funds that you can send to this particular Lightning address. So then you could show, for example, to the user, okay, like you're trying to send 100 Satoshis, but the minimum is 10,000 for this particular Lightning address. And you can show that before you try to process the payment. Or if you're trying to send over the amount that is accepted to that Lightning address, you can also show that. Or know whether or not it's valid if the user like tried to enter email instead. So here, this is how easy making a payment can be. So you saw I just plugged in my API key. I didn't need to really set anything else up. And now I'm entering my Lightning address, santos@zbd.gg, and processing the payment. And now I received the funds in my wallet. And there it is. So that's how, now we showed the ability to like receive money and to send money out. Like what does that actually look like in the code? We can see like the inputs that we're making, and we can see the response back that we got from the API. We have this ID, we have the fee in MSATs, we have the amount, we have the invoice that was actually paid. Pre-image is null because I paid from ZBD to ZBD, but if you're paying from like ZBD to wallet of Satoshi or something along those lines, you'd have the pre-image. Wallet ID that was used for the payment, transaction ID, a callback URL if you pass it in, along with an internal ID, comment, and process that, create that, etc. So these are some of the things that you can do. So you can also get like the BTC, USD, conversion rate or exchange rate. So that's kind of like the starter code. And if you look at the repo, let's go back to starter playground, or Replit rather. If you're interested in like seeing how any of these work in particular, you have all of these different components that were created along with the API. So you can see like, okay, like how did that create charge work, and like how would I implement it into my own application? So we have this like create charge component. This is like the module that's shown on the page. And when you actually click create charge, you have this handler function that takes in the amount and description, sets the state to loading. From there, we're making a request to our own internal API endpoint that's fetching from API/charge. So for next, for example, it's in this pages folder. You can go to API, and then there's charges. So then you can see it deconstructs the body or the payload that's being sent to this API. It constructs the payload to make the request to ZBD, and then it pulls in this ZBD object and creates a charge, passes the payload, you get the response back, and then you return the result to the application. So that's what's happening when we do this whole create charge flow, for example, here. And when we got that invoice back when it was loading, that made a request to the API, ZBD API in the platform, got the response back, and then rendered it on the page. So that's the whole flow to get a charge and then render a charge. You can also put this URI in a button to make it clickable and be able to be handled by another wallet, either on the web or a mobile app, for example. So when you are trying to pay a Lightning invoice, all that's happening is there's a URI as an href element or attribute, and it knows to open up a particular mobile app or, for example, browser extension, prompts you to pay it, and then when you pay it, then you see the response back on the server, and you know it's been paid if you're the application developer. So that's kind of like the whole flow. And you might be wondering, well, where did we get ZBD from? Like, where is this client from? There's a file in here under services called ZBD, and from this, you're basically getting the secret that we set, the environmental variable. We're creating a new ZBD object. That's what is available in the Node.js SDK. And then from there, it's checking if the API key is set, because you cannot make the request without the API key being set. And then it's returning a response back to the client if it's not set. And that's how we're getting that ZBD object to create the charge and make the request and basically hit the API. So that's the way that this code base is set up. And you have examples for not just charges, but the Lightning address flow, the LN URL withdrawal request, to get money in and to get money out of your application. Before I keep going, any questions so far? We'll kind of pause. Is this making sense? Yeah? All right, cool. All right, so I'm gonna clone a repo, and then we'll walk through like a paywall flow to see exactly like how do you take this money in, what does that user experience look like, and then do an automatic payout to a Lightning address. So I have this code base that I wrote. Find it. Here we are. So I have this repo. If you want to follow along, you can always like clone it as well. It's under Zantoshi, and then it's called ZBD-paywall-next.js. I'm just going to clone the repo. All right, now we have the repo, and we need to set the secret, the API key. Hopefully no one swipes my sats. Whoops. All right, cool. Cool, so I set my ZBD API key. Now let's see, let's do npm install. Let me see, I need to cd into the repo. Now I can npm install. Cool. Now let's do npm run dev and see what happens. All right, so we have like a very simple HTML page. That's the index. So I'm using Next 13 in this particular app. And I made it really simple, so it's not too complicated to follow. There's not like a lot of CSS or HTML to worry about. So all this page is doing, just creating a flex box, and then I'm putting in hello, buy my content, and then there is a link that will take you to the buy page. So for example, you could be using this to like build a way of like monetizing content or selling e-commerce goods like we were talking about earlier. Okay, so we got an error. Let's see what error we got. Okay, so we need to enable ngrok. This is the way that I can get the callback, because I need to check to see if a charge has been paid before I allow the user to access the content, right? You don't want, if you're trying to paywall something, you don't want them to be able to access without actually verifying that they completed the payment. So I need to set up this ngrok link here so that I can make my laptop available on the web to receive callbacks. And we'll explain what that looks like too. We have some examples. All right. Let's see, I got another connection error. Let's see. It's probably because I stopped running npm run dev. I need to update this again. All right, there we go. Click buy content. Still got an error. Let me see what's going on with this. So what this is doing is this is making a request. Making a request to my API-charges. From the API-charges, I have a route file, which then I'm getting the payload. So I constructed this very similarly to the starter playground code. So this is kind of like an example of how you can take that code and implement it. So you have the payload, it's pulling in the ZBD object, which I'm getting from the service that we were looking at previously. So that's the same sort of code. And then we're making the request to our own internal API. And then we're getting the charge, and then we're returning it back to the application. So let's see. Oh, still got an error. Return response, pulling component, then we have a QR value. Let's see, syntax error, JSON 0, API 404. I think it has something to do with the URL that we're using. Yeah, this. Okay. Sorry, I changed my ngrok URL a few times, so that's kind of what part of the problem is. Now I'm getting failed to parse from URL HTTPS. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, 2 spaces.
You did all the replace, final replace.
Yeah. An unexpected end JSON input. Yeah, I don't know what I did wrong with this code base, so I'll switch to Django. Yeah, sorry about that, everyone. I don't know what I did wrong with that one. It was working when I tested it last for the last ZBDapi Workshop that we did.
She said.
Yeah. It's always the demo curse, I swear. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Please. Alright, so ZBD. Okay, get clone. Alright, then we'll hit install our requirements.txt. Alright, now we are going to set up the MD file. Here's the example. So we'll just put whatever for the secret key, and then we'll copy our API key from another project. Oh, we had set it from the reference file. 1 second. There we go. And now we'll run the server, secret key. Oh, I set it wrong file. All right, so now everything is connected. So this is my other code base that I wrote in Django. I'm still learning Next.js, so I'm not sure if I committed something that was halfway finished. Most likely what I did. But here you can see the project wallet balance from the Lightning address payment that we spent and from what we topped up, and now you can click buy. And now we have an invoice, and basically this code is doing the exact same thing, where we have this ZBD project or app, LN app, then we have these views, and the view is doing the same thing. So it's taking the Python SDK, it's creating a ZBD project object, it's getting the wallet details, and it's getting it from this API call that's part of the Python SDK, getting the wallet details, converting it from msats to sats by passing in the balance and then rendering a context, and that's what's shown on the home page. When you click buy, all it's doing is it's creating a charge. You're specifying the number of seconds that it expires after, and then the amount in msats, because that's what the ZBD API is built in. And then you have a description, Lightning rules. You pass in the invoice or charge as a context, and then you can render it on the page. So from there, we have the charge rendered, and you might be wondering, well, how did you do the QR code, for example? Well, on this buy page, all we're doing is we have this free library. It's called Curious, Q-R-I-O-U-S, and then we're passing in the URI, and we're then generating a QR code with this code, and that's how it's actually rendered on the page in the template. From there, we have this charge status endpoint that we're polling every 3 seconds to see whether or not it's paid. So on the actual views.py, you can see charge status, and what it's doing is it's making a request to get charge details, passing in the ID, and that's what's returning back the status from the ZBD API itself. So then you can know, okay, is this charge status completed or is it not? And do something based on that condition. So in my case, if it's not completed, I'm just returning the status as not completed. And then if it is completed, then I'm going to redirect them to a page that I call blog. So you can see the status is still pending, nothing has changed. So then if we click this QR code, let's see, I'll scan it and pay it. All right, from there I processed the payment, and now because of that condition, I was able to redirect them to some sort of content, and we should get a callback as well if we set up it to be available on ngrok. So let's see if we have the urls.py set up. So we can create a path called callback, for example. Then we can do views.callback, call it name callback. Then we need to create the view, and then we'll make basically we'll set something up to where if we receive like a completed payment, we'll actually process straight to like a lightning address, for example, that we pass in. So do callback, we're going to receive a request, and we'll print out request.body, then we're going to run ngrok. It's running on port 8000. And when we create this ZBD object, you can pass in a second parameter with the callback URL. Okay. And now let's test this out. Paste in the QR code, process the payment. All right, payment was successful. And let's see what we got back in the console. So we need to pass in CRSF exemption. So CSRF token exemption, Django. Here we go. RF exempt. All right, now let's try that again. Cool. So we'll open it up. Not sure why that's unhandling. Take QR code. Process the payment. Let's see what we got back. I still got the same error, but I didn't save it. Okay.
Do you need a path?
What's that?
I noticed on the ngrok URL you didn't have a path to the URL.
No, I think it's because basically I need to Django automatically adds a CRSF token to every endpoint, so then you're not like getting a bunch of like cross-site scripting or like people hitting your form or your endpoint that are not like making a valid request. It just kind of stops some of the bot spam stuff. So I'm just gonna get the CSRF exemption, but for some reason I keep getting it failed. So let's see. The exemption here. I think you can do it at the urls.py too, CSRF exemption. Django. There we go. Okay. try this one more time. Image. It's reload. Not sure why I'm getting that error. Okay, worked with my mobile app. Now I'm processing the payment. Now let's see if we got something different back. Oh, I still have that error. That's so weird. There we go. I just had to restart the code apparently. All right, so that status change, we processed the payment, but I still got CSRF token, CSRF cookie not set. Django error. That's weird. Yeah, I'm not sure quite why I'm getting this error. Let's see. So let's review the code. So we passed in this endpoint here for the callback URL. Let me look at my documentation. Python SDK.
You decorated the function, right?
Yeah, I did. I added the CSRF exemption. Maybe it's because I'm hiding in two different locations. Let's see, 1,000. You know what?
Where'd you import it?
I think it's because in the settings.py, allowed host. Check the console. Yeah, so let's see, we're getting an error, it's making an insecure request must be served over HTTPS, but I am serving it over HTTPS. That's weird. Click buy, HTTP, that might be why. And if we do it on local host, 3,000.
That typo there. HTTPS.
Then we need to add local host. And now I'm getting the same error. How strange.
Where you added HTTPS, I think it's a typo.
Oh. Thank you. There we go. Yeah, thank you. Okay, and then the status should get the charge and process the payment. Yeah, I'm not sure why this CSRF exempt is not working though. So I've definitely imported example. I have plenty of other code base I can look at though. So let's see. Let's see. We have payouts. We have the payouts app. We use some pi, so we load body, we print out from there, then urls.pi, we have the CSR exempt. Path, callback. Then let's see for the static or the settings.pi. Here we go. That's the code that I'm missing. All right, let's try this one more time. Cool, so that works. And we still got the same error that we got back before. Let's see. Oh, I think I do know what it is now. We need to get the ZBD production. The Django basically automatically has kind of like whitelisting. So for example, if you do not explicitly state the APIs that are allowed to make requests or hit your request within Django, then it'll automatically block that request. So what's happening is the ZBD production server is trying to hit my application, and my application is rejecting it. So I've only whitelisted my own ngrok application. So now I need to get the ZBD production API key and pass it in. So I think that's what ultimately is missing. Let's see. And we'll just allow all posts. Cool, that works. No, we still got an error here. So we need tabs open. Here. callback, we get that same error. Yeah, it's okay there. So strange. I have the CSRF, maybe just bad demo luck. I have the CSRF exemption token that I imported here. And I also imported it here to wrap around. Oh, you're right. I did forget the. All right, perfect. So now we're not getting that error. We can return a HTTP response string, so we're going to do that. Fantastic. Now we should be able to load the body, get the payload, and process a Lightning address payment. Okay, fantastic. And there we go. Finally, we got the callback. Okay. So now you can see on the callback, you can get back the amount, the created at, the callback URL, when it expired, along with an internal ID. Okay. So now let's go ahead and actually process a payment. So if data, for example, status is equal to completed, we can then take ZBDapi, for example, and process a send payment to Lightning address, and I think this is actually called back on. And it takes in a few arguments, the Lightning address, which we'll put at santos@zbd.gg, put hello world, and we need the MSAT value too. So we'll send 21 sats. That's based in millisats. Now let's go ahead and try and process this payment again. Okay, we'll pass in return ID. I did fix this on a newer version, so let's put Lightning address. Process the payment again. And all right, cool. So now we just attached a success condition wherein I fired Lightning address payment straight to my own Lightning address based on whether or not something else was paid. So we received the payment from the paywall, and for example, if you wanted to automatically pay out a creator, you could check if the status is completed, you could pass in dynamically into that internal ID and begin splitting the payment. So that's kind of like one way that I implemented it with an application I built. So every time like my application received payment from a paywall, for example, course, it then took like 1% as like a fee for the platform fee, and then processed the 99% payment automatically to the other creator's Lightning address. So you could also add like a record in a database to grant access to like a purchase to do automatic payouts. You can build an application for like esports payouts, for example, where you can have like multiple of these Lightning addresses and then process the payment in the same way. You don't have to attach it to like a success condition. But I like this example because it shows like how to get money into your project and then how to process money out automatically. So you don't really have to custody any of your users' funds. You can like set up for a content example use case. Another use case is like what Fountain has built on top of us. So with Fountain, every time they have like a podcaster that receives a boost for a podcast, they can automatically split the payment amongst all the podcasters and execute key sends for each one and process the payments in real time. You can do the same thing a little bit simpler with Lightning address since it's a human readable ID. You saw it's like 3 arguments that you pass in to the API request and then process the payment basically. So that's kind of the examples. And if you wanted to see some examples of UX flows, let me pull up Figma. I have this file for you all, so then you can see like, okay, this is how I would design like a Lightning address payout. So you can enter the payout or the Lightning address, the amount, the comment, hit submit. That's where you're making a request to the ZBD API like we showed. All you have to do is call your object, dot, send payment to Lightning address, amount sats, Lightning address, comment, optionally an internal ID, and then you can process the payment. If you wanted to do a paywall with LN URL, you can also do that. So you click buy, and for that specific user, you'll generate an LN URL with the min and max amount to be equal, and you want to allow like allowed slots to be 1 as an argument, because you only want it payable once. And then when that is actually received, that payment, you can then update the status in like a database or somewhere else to say, okay, this static charge is tied to this user and it was paid, so now they're allowed to access this particular piece of content, or I can ship them this good and collect their shipping information. So that's one way you can use LN URL pays. You can also generate these to be where the allowed slot's null, so you can have an unlimited number of these sort of things. So you can use it for like a tipping use case. You can also enable Lightning addresses based on them. So you can grant all of your users Lightning addresses. Yeah, sorry about the whole CRF token and the other issue. I didn't expect that. I ran this code base like, I don't know, a week ago and it was working perfectly fine. So sorry that took so long to figure out. I guess it's bad demo luck, but it is what it is. What questions does the audience have so far? And I've spent quite a lot of time trying to solve that issue.
Sanchez, can you talk about where all this information is located?
Oh yeah, so if you want to watch like a better version of this, what Car and I did on a hacker stream a few weeks ago and kind of recap this is all available on ZBD.dev. So we have this ZBD 101 workshop that we recorded all of these examples. We did it live as well, where I walk through like the Next.js paywall, walk through like all the code. So you can find all the same content I just covered now available online. And it does show, so you guys know that I'm not lying, it does show the Next.js paywall working, and we add in real time, Car and I add the send payment to Lightning address in JavaScript. We also have like building a Lightning address app where I follow the guide that I wrote on like building like a pay-to Lightning address, so setting up the HTML, the input fields, the API call, and then processing the request. So for example, if you wanted to build like a wallet functionality, that would be like the way you would do the pay-to Lightning address for like your own personal project. We walk through that. And then we have like UI UX patterns. So if you're curious, this was from SatsBuy, a hackathon that Car hosted, I think back in March or April. We have like a walkthrough of like all the different use cases for Lightning address. So you can do payment splitting, you can enable like easy withdrawals or automatic withdrawals. That's one thing that I did with it, and then here shows the automatic withdrawals. Here shows some examples of like static charges and what you might use, or sorry, this is for LN URL pay and withdrawal request. So then you can also like understand the UX flows and how that might work and some economics and such. So you can find like all this information whenever you want at zbd.dev. What other questions do folks have? Any other questions? No? Okay.
There's one right there.
I have another question.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, is there a reason that we're using Next.js here over any other like JS?
Oh yeah, you could use like Node.js, you could build something with React or whatever you prefer. I ended up getting converted to Next.js a few months ago, like a month ago by Andre. I really love it. I was writing applications in like the Django web framework, and as you saw, it's like a lot more convoluted than writing something in Next. And now you have like one-click deployments where you can just click a button and it just like deploys my code base and I have it spun up on a server. I really love that aspect of it. You can also like, do the fancy things with state that you can do with React, whereas like in Django, I was doing it with HTMX and like having to like pull state and like update things, and it was a lot more difficult to manage all that and provide that great user experience. So that's why I ended up moving to building things with Next.js. But you can do it with whatever you prefer. Sure.
I have kind of a random specific question. What would be your ideal situation for implementing auth in an app that's using like the ZBD API for like Lightning services? So like I have an app, I'm going to be onboarding users, giving them a Lightning wallet. I start thinking about auth.
Yeah.
It's a big trouble, but it's also like I don't want to have to store data. I don't have to. LMURL auth is cool in theory, but it can get like a little bit messy. Like, do you have any like boilerplates you like to go to, or just flows you really like?
Yeah, that's one thing I really liked about Django is that it has auth out the box. So it has all of the templates. It has all of the code. All you have to do is just like add a few lines of code to your settings.py file, which is like your main app, settings. And then you're off to the races. You can pretty much add, I think it's probably 12 lines of code total, and then a few templates to be like your brand. And then you can also like install a package to import in GitHub, Google, like all of your standard OAuth 2 providers, and it'll automatically create the account in the database and kind of go from there. So you already get auth out the box with Django, and then for Next.js, Supabase is kind of what I go to. It's probably, there's some trade-offs if you were looking to do like more scalable application, but if you're building a POC or MVP, even beyond, it has database, like auth, all of those things in one platform, which I really love. So those are like the two auth options that I mainly focus on if I'm writing code in Python, using Django Web Framework, or building an Next.js application.
Who does the new login?
Oh yeah, you can use login with ZBD too. Yeah, we have that available, so you can always use that. All right, any other questions? Cool, so I'll send out these slide decks. I also have these like technical integration hints, so if you're kind of wondering like the overall flow, like how would this be implemented at a high level? So if you wanted to use something other than like Next.js or Python, but and understand like, okay, this is step A, step B, step C to Z, then I have this available for you. So if you want to make Lightning Edge payment, you can check if it's greater than 10, check the validity of it, and then if it's good, fire the payment, you get the callback, and then you can perform whatever success actions that you're interested in. We have it for like pay invoice, receive invoice, generating a static charge, handling a static charge, withdrawal request, etc.
Where are these drawings? Okay.
They are linked in the deck, so I'll share the deck, and then from there, you'll be able to click the links and it'll take you directly to these resources. All right, well, thanks for hanging out, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Santos, when are we gonna do the next one?
Like
10 minutes, okay.
that was brutal. I didn't expect that CSRF issue, and the next issue I was like, oh man. Oh, thank you. This is kind. I'll throw them into the Telegram. I'll send it out right now. You.
Okay.